Welcome to the third and final episode of my abandoned and unfinished projects in Planet Coaster 1. The support on this series has been insane, so thank you so much for that. We've nearly gone through all of my abandoned and unfinished creations in this first game, but I've saved some of the best to last. So for the final time, welcome to my abandoned and unfinished creations in Planet Coaster. Okay, so I've been deliberating as to whether I wanted to actually show off this ride or not, because this would have been the headline attraction of Parker Pleasure Park, which is my kind of not really cancelled but maybe indefinitely postponed park series. I started building it obviously in this game, Planet Coaster 1, but since Planet Coaster 2 is coming out, I've kind of indefinitely put it on hold. I might try and remake something a bit like it in Planet Coaster 2, but it was a bit, I don't know, not the perfect idea for a park anyway. There was a lot that needed work on it. But for this, I built a wooden coaster that would have been like the centre attraction of the park, that would have been like visible from outside the park. Everyone would have known it historically because of this like older wooden coaster. And that's what it is. It's a very old wooden coaster that I've designed, very similar to Big Dipper and Blackpool Pleasure Beach. It could have been probably built just after that because it feels a bit more modern. But yeah, it's just basically loads of airtime hills. Obviously it's got parts of the track that are connected together because that's how older wooden coasters were built, so they could use like less structure. It was just cheaper as well, so that's why the track kind of hugs these parts here. Main drop is very Big Dipper inspired. That's exactly how Big Dipper's drop is. Then the rest of it's just loads of airtime hills. And obviously it could have been like had retracks over the years and stuff, but this would have been exactly how the coaster would have looked like in Parker Pleasure Park, would the park have been finished. But the most exciting part about that park is that this coaster would have had work done to it to bring it up to a more modern standard, which I would have done in that park series. But first we'll take a ride on the older version. So of course it's using the classic wooden coaster trains. I don't know what manufacturer these actually are, but they feel like in-house ones. Again, like most of the Blackpool, I didn't think all of the Blackpool Woodies actually, they're all in-house. Very comically slow lift hill as well, of course, just like the Blackpool ones. But I don't know, Big Dipper is one of my favourite coasters in the UK and second favourite of Blackpool. I just love the thing, it's brilliant, and when that had its retrack project I started to get interested in it a bit more. So that's when I built this ride, and I just had such a great time building it. It's like the most classic, perfect wooden coaster. It's just loads of little airtime hills, basically. That's all wooden coasters could really do. And then I had the, I used the chain lift that you saw there just at that highest point. That would have been like an anti-rollback mechanism that they've put on. You can see Big Dipper, Grand National, I think Nick Streak has these as well, where it's like the top of hills, just in case it's a windy day, they've got like this anti-rollback thing. Random straight section there as well, like most older wooden coasters do have. So yeah, that's basically all it is. It's a nice simple layout, very fun, and just loads of airtime hill after airtime hill. And then this is kind of the only section where the track actually banks, other than like the bottom of the first airtime hill. So you can tell why that transition and this one was a little bit jank, because that's how it would have been back in the day whenever they built this. But I will show you what I did to this coaster, or would have done to it, in that park series. So I would have had the gravity group come in and do a full retrack of the coaster, add on a lot more supports as well, and give it, not really a repaint, but like remove all of the white paint of the ride, because basically there would have been a time jump within that park series, so I wanted the coaster to undergo like a lot of work, but as if the coaster had actually been abandoned as well. So they would have obviously required extensive work to bring it up to an actual usable standard, probably replacing most of the wood on the ride, definitely most of the supports, the track, the catwalks, but then that also gave the park an exciting opportunity to reprofile the entire thing and give it a lot more exciting moments as well. So that manufacturer that came in to do that was Gravity Group. I've wanted to make a Gravity Group Woody for quite a while, so doing like a retracking and rework project seemed like quite a cool idea for that. And you can see the sections of track as well, like the darker wood would have been the original structure, and then the lighter wood, like for this section here, because this was all obviously brand new, this was just a flat turn before, shows all of the newer sections of track. There's some quite new elements. There was like whole sections here that had been replaced where the airtime hill's been like completely reprofiled, so I just thought I'd just replace all of the wood. And then obviously I've added these support structures onto quite a lot of the ride as well to future-proof it a bit more, make it more durable. But yeah, I had such a great time just like redoing this older wooden coaster. Obviously it kept pretty much the exact same format. It's very sensitive to the original, but obviously now it's even more thrilling for obviously a more thrilling audience as well. You get that with like older kids and family rides just aren't really what they would be now. Like the market's kind of shifted to just more thrilling rides in general for everyone, so that's what I wanted to do for this. So we'll take a quick ride on it because I had such a fun time reprofiling it all. Like there's like double ups and outer banks going on, and there's all sorts, so I hope you enjoy this one. And something that you'll be happy to know has changed as well is that the lift hill speed is now much faster. So obviously this is a modern wooden coaster, so it's got all of the stuff you'd expect with a modern ride. As you can see there on the left, the first drop is now steeper. It's the exact same height, like this section here, or the lift hill and this turnaround is in the exact same position, but the first drop would have been completely retracked. Probably most of the wood replaced, so this enabled us to make a steeper drop. Then that is now a double up into that airtime hill. That's a bit more banked as you come down, and obviously that part is completely brand new. Nice off-axis airtime hill. Then that is a more smoother transition into the upwards part and the drop coming out of there. It's like banked now. That airtime hill is sharper. Then now it banks here and does like a wall stall kind of turn, which is quite cool. Then we have a double down on this side. Steeper airtime hill again. And then a more natural entry to this turnaround, which is a lot more banked. Well, I say a lot more, it wasn't actually banked at all before. Then you've got the two reprofiled airtime hills. This part here is a lot smoother profile transition. Under airtime hill there, again, this a lot more smoother. Look how you got the structure there as well. And then into the brakes. I had such a fun time making this, I absolutely love it. And it would have really been the perfect addition to Parker Pleasure Park if I would have finished it. But I'm glad I get to show it off now. Now this one is a coaster unlike anything I've built before. I'm sorry for the pronunciation of this, it's going to be awful, but is it Jura? Did a competition to build a Vekoma or Arrow multi-looping coaster for one of their parks. I can't remember which one it was, sorry, but I started to make a coaster for this competition. Very much inspired by, well, a couple of different coasters, but predominantly Goodric's at Park Asterix. I actually enjoy that ride. I don't know whether it was just because it was a morning ride when I went on and it was running slow, but I actually really enjoyed it. I had a great time on there, didn't find it too rough or anything, so I wanted to build a coaster kind of like that. So with this, the area and the coaster station, were fixed, but the rest of it was completely up to us what we did. So I tried to keep kind of as much classic transitions as possible without making it too janky. It would have been like maybe a slightly more modern Arrow Vekoma looper. That's what I was going for anyway. And then you've got the station down there. Pretty good dispatches actually. I think that was just how it was when I got the park. And then that coaster line that's on the floor, I think is where like a water line was for a lake in the park. But yeah, I was pretty happy with this. Like I said before, I tried to give it like, I don't know, a decent amount of jank, but at the same time you do want it to be quite smooth, because when you, when you make jank in Planet Coaster, it can come across as that, like, the coaster just isn't that good. Well, that dispatch is almost too good. That's gonna have to wait at the top of the lift hill. So I kind of wanted it to be like some decent jank at some points, but mostly quite smooth. Otherwise, you still want it to be an enjoyable ride. But yeah, I never got it done. Ideally, I would have added more to this layout. It doesn't really feel long enough or exciting enough, and I would have fully custom supported it as well. But yeah, I'd like to enter other competitions if I had more time. I'd definitely like to do more stuff like that, but we'll take a ride. I included that little pre-drop there that most of these coasters have. It's just to give it like enough speed to get most of the train on the lift hill, because if it's just the front of the train, sometimes it might not be enough to get it like to be pulled up the lift. So that's normally why that's there, to create a bit of speed before the lift hill. And you've got this interestingly profiled kind of banked turn there, and it flattens off, goes down into that straight drop. The clearance on this, it doesn't look great, but it is actually alright. It just looks a bit questionable, but I did make sure that was enough. And so that loop goes the bank turn, and the other side of that interlocking loop, which I thought was a really cool feature to add. It comes out of that loop banked as well, which you wouldn't normally have, but like I said, that was the intentional jank. There's a very smooth corkscrew for a coaster of this type. and another one, so you've got interlocking corkscrews there. Then a quick transition into the brakes. So yeah, it was alright. I was somewhat happy with the coaster, but like I said, it never progressed any further than this. Now, this was actually another coaster that would have been in Parker Pleasure Park, and to do with the modernisation of the park, I thought I would add. Well, it depends what the coaster actually ended up being. I still don't really know. It's kind of a nice mix between a Gerstlauer Infinity coaster and a Max Striker. It kind of offers both in a way. Like, the layout kind of feels similar if it was both, but as you can see, this is quite unfinished. It was originally, the reason why this part here is so spaced out is because it was originally supposed to have a second launch. So as you can see, that element just there, I love that stall, it's so snappy. That element just there, as it does that inversion, it was supposed to come into a second launch to go down here and then do some other stuff down there. Obviously that never happened because the coaster never progressed any further. So I'll run you through the layout quickly. I was really happy with this though. It was like very nice and smoothed out because it was all finalized, but you got very smilery inversion straight out of the station, and it goes into a very punchy Gerstlauer launch if it was a Gerstlauer, up, top hat, beyond vertical drop, and then this would have actually been where that wooden coaster was we went on earlier, the turnaround section right at the end. This would have actually gone underground and come out of that turnaround section, and this section would have been above the wooden coaster. Don't know how that would have worked, considering that coaster would have probably been listed, but oh well. There's those two cool inversions there, very sharp airtime hill into a huge cobra roll. I love a good cobra roll. It's flying around there as well, and then into a very nicely profiled stall. The exit's quite interesting. It like snaps like and does like a full turn before going underneath the brake run. And you have a very nice profiled corkscrew, like a wave turn with a hump in the middle so you get some airtime, a turn, more airtime, and then kind of similarly profiled inversion to the last two on the Smiler, where it's like it's an inversion that's trying to get you somewhere, so the profiling's a little bit awkward. So that like threads through there, and then it would have gone into the second launch. But like I said, I'm quite happy with how this coaster got until I stopped like working on it. I don't really know where it would have gone after that, but the coaster's not going to get any further than this, so it doesn't really matter. But anyway, we'll take a ride. I really like coasters that start off like this. They're such a cool element, very Smiler-esque, and I suppose Rides are Happiness-esque as well. It goes through a bit faster than the one on RTH. Zooms up that top hat, very nicely profiled. We get some great airtime at the top. You plummet down, pretend there's a wooden coaster there. Then this inversion is really cool. It's like the flying snake dive in reverse. Big airtime hills, you can fly down into this. This is kind of like the Smiler section actually. I probably would have like thread another inversion through this like the Smiler does with the Cobra on the back wing. Very nice stall. You can tell this coaster was quite developed because of how smooth it is and how like refined the profiling is. Wave turn with an airtime hump in it, another airtime hill, and then that weird inversion which takes you through to the second launch. But yeah, a bit sad that Parker Pleasure Park, at least in this game, like Planet Coaster 1, will never fully be completed, but there's hopes for that project, or a project of like similar aesthetics to hopefully appear in Planet Coaster 2, which will be very cool, because I don't want to reveal what that project was, but I was so passionate about it in the beginning, but unfortunately lost kind of interest in it as I started to work on it more, which it happens for Voyager's Adventure. Hopefully it won't happen for Deadwood Dale, because I just love that theme so much. Complete passion project, like I've said a few times, but yeah, I just kind of lost interest in this park, which is sad because I really enjoyed the start of it, and especially the vision for where it was going is like a concept that I'm quite obsessed with still now. But I'll hopefully get back to a project of a similar scope someday. This coaster would have been another one to add to my challenge series, and the challenge would have been if Intamin made like a modern gen Intamin stand-up coaster. Obviously this one features a launch like most modern Intamins do, but this came kind of after Drayton Manor announced the transformation of Shockwave, and it got me thinking, like, I wonder if Intamin still made stand-up coasters, what they'd be like today. So that was sort of the brief for this one. I did actually record this challenge video nearly fully, but as you can see, the coaster, it's nearly finished. I'm still not necessarily happy with the ending. It feels a bit too similar to Pipeline, the ending, how it's just loads of like airtime hills. So they probably would have reworked the ending. The shape of it as well wasn't really informed by anything, it just kind of happened. But I was quite happy with how it turned out. It's pretty smooth. I think it would still do with another smoothing on slight reprofiling pass. I haven't put in the launch track either, and like I said, the supports need doing, but yeah, I got mostly far with it, pretty happy with it. But as a concept, I think Intamin could do something pretty cool with this. It was like the wing coaster I mentioned, I think it was in, it might have been the first episode, like saying if Intamin still made these wing coasters, it would be so cool to see like them revive some of their classic attractions. But we'll take a ride on this. I seem to remember it being pretty cool. Nice bumped airtime launch there. It's kind of similar to Pipeline in some ways, but it feels like it's surfing, but obviously you don't do loops while you're surfing, so it depends kind of how you take some of these elements. You have a nice turnaround there. I just kind of came up with the idea for it. I wanted it to be quite swooping, like left to right, so that was sort of the brief, like the transitions and stuff. So now you've got all the inversions out of the way. It's just airtime, off-axis airtime, turn, wave turn with the bump in it, more airtime, even more airtime than the brakes. Like, I'm mostly happy with the layout, but it just kind of feel a little bit all samey in a way. But yeah, that would be mostly what I would think would happen if Intamin brought back the stand-up coaster, which I think would be very cool, because it's just B&M that are doing it at the moment, so having another manufacturer doing it, doing their own take on it, I think could be really interesting. I think in one of the previous videos of the Abandoned and Unfinished series, I mentioned that my Mack spinning coaster from Voyager's Adventure had quite a few different variations, and I mentioned that in that park episode as well. Well, these are the 3 variations that I had after that one that I built earlier as well. All 3 of these kind of offered a similar start to the ride, but doing things a little bit differently. As you can see, the one on the right is the one that I actually took forward and carried on. But obviously this one goes over the top hat pretty quickly. This one does it at kind of a medium pace, and this one takes longer while we're up there. But yeah, it's like 3 different takes on the ride. So this one obviously is the one that you all have seen in Voyager's Adventure already. Goes up, does the very Ride to Happiness style top hat turnaround. So that one you've kind of seen before. This one does like a really weirdly profiled dive loop where it kind of stalls out at the top but half on its side. And it comes back down to the ground and then does like this big corkscrew over the launch section. But this would have completely changed the whole direction of the coaster that I was going for, because if you remember the Voyager's Adventure one, most of the layout occurred like over in this space and then came back over to the station to do the second launch. And then there's this one on the end. Obviously all 3 of them start out the same, and this one launched into kind of a cheetah hunt section, but instead of the track passing back under itself before it goes under the drop like the right way up, this one passes back under itself with an inversion. I thought it could have been like a cool take on how Cheetah Hunt does it, but kind of offering a bit of a different experience. So it goes into that almost helix there and then goes into a pretty slow downwards inversion, sort of similar to Iron Gwazi's Death Roll, but obviously this is quite a bit slower. But you're spinning, so I suppose it offers a bit more variation and excitement in the ride. But yeah, those were like the different concepts for how that coaster started out live. 2 more coasters that Voyager's Adventure would have also had that would have actually been in the position of the multi-launch Vekoma family coaster we have would have been a Vekoma family boomerang and a Vekoma kind of sit-down thrill coaster. I think these are called, it's either the Bermuda Blitz or the Wildcat. I know it's just 2 different layouts, but this was very similar to Phoenix. I'd watched quite a lot of vlogs around the time that I started building this of that ride, and I thought it just looked awesome, so I wanted to build something like it. Does the inversion over the station much like Phoenix as well, and then kind of comes around. Nice interaction between the 2 of them that was like somewhat timed up but could have been executed a bit better. And then does nice inversions to brakes. And then obviously the boomerang on this side, very simple layout, just kind of twists in between the green track. But we'll go for a ride on both, I think, for these. I can't really remember much about this ride because I built it very early on in the Voyager's Adventure park and then pretty much never went back to it after I think Big Bear opened, and I just became obsessed with how that coaster looks, and that whole idea just completely replaced this area. But it's a pretty decent coaster. It's very much Phoenix, they're very similar. It does the stall, the twist, and that very badly profiled twisting airtime hill. Does the inversion of the station like Phoenix and Lek. I don't know what's going on with the profile in there, it's not smooth at all. Yeah, it's kind of some very janky looking airtime hills and twists and turns. This layout didn't really have a lot of imagination behind it, I just kind of wanted to get something down quick to get a decent sense of the scale of the ride, but yeah, it's not great. And then on the boomerang side of things, it's just a very simple Vekoma family boomerang. It's, yeah, nothing too special of a layout, like it interacts with this and would have interacted with a cool themed area if I'd have decided to keep these 2, but as it stands at the moment, it's a pretty standard layout for this ride. Very much reminiscent of most of the existing Vekoma family boomerangs like Luna or Light Explorer. There's quite a few, mostly all similar ones, so kind of took inspiration from a multitude of those to create this layout. Again, nothing amazing, but I was very intrigued by the concept of these two coasters dueling each other. Another coaster that nearly made it into Voyager's Adventure was a very different version of the indoor coaster. As you can see, I used the Vekoma swinging mine trains instead. I don't really know why I did this, I just kind of thought it would be interesting, I suppose. But as you can probably see over here, this was around the time that the concept art and the images, the first photos of the Donkey Kong coaster kind of came about. So I had an idea that there could be some strange, there's a launch track there if you're wondering why there's no track, this strange almost multi-dimensional coaster using this track type where it swings throughout most of the layout, and you would have gotten the same indoor scenery that this coaster has of the actual one that is in Voyager's Adventure. But you would have also had, why is that on its side? You would have also had this section here, which would have run along the outside facade of the building, and you would have kind of got a cool tease of the ride whilst it's running on its side. I think this could work to build a Donkey Kong style coaster if you were going to do it. It could be executed quite well, because it really does work. But yeah, this just never really came to be. I wasn't really feeling the concept once I'd started it, and then after when I'd made the alternate version of this using the Gerstlauer Bob variation, that just felt completely right for that style of ride, so that's what I ended up going for. But we're gonna have to ride this to see what it looks like. We'll start it on the launch track section here, but that must be such a cool transition if you were ever going to do that in real life. I know obviously the Donkey Kong one is fixed on that axis of track, but to have one that could change, I know it'll put a lot of stress on the track and the train, so I don't know how feasible it'd actually be to do in real life, but this coaster would have been very unique when we would have actually built it. It's quite extreme for a swinging coaster as well. I would have probably needed to tone that down given it's a family coaster. But yeah, it slows down here and then the track, on your side, and then you do that part across the facade. Yeah, it was a cool idea, but the actual execution was questionable. Couple more random coasters here. These were actually ones that were in the Deadwood Dale map when I started kind of concepting for the park. These were going to be coasters that I was just kind of toying with the idea of putting in the park. Some of which I hadn't really done before, there's this one here, which would have been a Gerstlauer family coaster, very similar to Fire Chaser Express. That was the vibe I was going for. It comes out the station, just this interesting element that I was thinking could be above a sign that goes here. I thought that would look quite cool. And then this would be a very terrain coaster. As you can see, it kind of comes up the main lift hill here, and then you would have had this downward section that would have been very close to the ground and hugging the side of this big hill. I thought it could have been a cool idea for an attraction, but yeah, never really went any further than this. Just, I don't know, the concept didn't really hit for me. Same with this one. This was going to be in place of the Intermin coasters that are now in the industrial area of the park, which you'll have all seen, which is quite cool. It's very similar to Halzuber in some ways, but now that I've ridden that, I wouldn't design this coaster in kind of any way similar to this, I suppose. We'll take a quick ride on it so you can see what I mean, but I just wasn't really feeling the design for this, and now that, like I said, that I've been on Halzuber, I would have probably designed it very similar to that. It's got a pretty decently profiled steep first drop, and then it goes into this quite strange turnaround that isn't, I don't know, profiled the greatest. It comes into this swooping airtime hill and then a stall. I think a stall could be quite cool on an invert. It depends how it's executed, I suppose, because OTSRs, I don't know. I mean, this wouldn't have OTSRs anyway, actually, but a lap bar. But yeah, how the restraints would, and I don't know, I just don't know how it'd feel on an inverted coaster. It might just feel a bit odd. And then, obviously, this section hasn't been smoothed yet, but yeah, it was an interesting concept. Then another coaster that I was toying with for Deadwood Dale was a Mara Spinner. I've only ever made one of these, and it was way back on Western Adventure, which was a park I made on the Xbox, probably over 2 years ago now, which is crazy. But yeah, this coaster, again, just the layout just didn't really feel that interesting. I tried to incorporate some of the terrain with it, as you can see how this is the higher up part and it goes lower down here. But obviously since taking it out of that park, because it's got no coasters that aren't staying in that park in it anymore. But yeah, it was okay. It was a bit short, needed something a bit more to it, and didn't really feel unique enough for me to warrant spending a lot of time on it. And then we sort of had our Hyperia knockoff. Again, I think this was around the same time that I actually did ride Hyperia. This is pretty much exactly the same height as well, but while I was building this, I did put it in Deadwood Dale, but I just thought like it just looked way too big compared to the rest of the park, and the fact that this park is predominantly a family park, it really just didn't fit. I did spend quite a bit of time trying to get the profiling right on the first drop, and I do believe I got it pretty spot on. It works quite nicely if it's not smooth in the slightest, and then it goes into like a big stall element. So I was mostly happy with it, but it could have been better. And then on this side, this was another coaster concept that I had for Deadwood Dale that never actually materialised. But I do think it would have been quite an interesting one. It's a launched wooden coaster, specifically a launched Gravity Group. I think it was either Gravity Group or GCI's latest like marketing thing. They did say that they could actually do launched wooden coasters. I really hope it doesn't end up being the same fate as like Lightning Rod, where they just don't do them anymore. But this was like a really interesting twisted layout that I had for this. Very Gravity Group with all the twists and turns and transitions that it had. Quite happy with how this looks even now, but it's just not really meant for Deadwood Dale. It never fitted. It just looks cool, but the idea like wasn't executed too well. We'll go for a ride on it so you can see what I mean, but I do like the overall concept of it, and I think it was a very interesting coaster to make, and I'm glad that I made it because it just showed me what you can still do with this game. But pretty cool launch. It's still a family coaster, I suppose, but I think it'd be quite intense. Like the transitions, like that transition there was really nicely profiled. It's a very like smooth and floaty coaster, but I imagine it probably gives some pretty intense like positives as you push down into some of these valleys. Got like a couple of more airtime twists and snaps and a nice head chopper there into the brakes, so yeah, it's pretty good. And there you have it. That's all of my abandoned and unfinished work from Planet Coaster 1. Thank you so much for the support in this series, it's been absolutely insane. When I recorded episode 1 for this series, I think I asked for 100 likes and I'd make a part 2, and that episode is now on over 1,000, so thank you so much for that. Absolutely crazy, thank you so much for all the support, not only on this series, but just in the channel in general. It's really, really appreciated. Thanks for watching, see you in the next one.